A wolf soulmate romance written by Clara Nightshade. Prologue. They say some loves are born from stars. Others from war, or destiny. Hers was born from wilderness. It did not arrive in a silk ribbon or a whispered promise. It came wrapped in fur and blood and silence. With teeth that could tear, and eyes that saw through to the marrow of who she was. When Evelyn Briar first arrived in the Wildrealm, she thought she had been cursed. The forest spoke in riddles. The wind carried no comfort. And she was alone, achingly, terrifyingly alone. Then came the wolf. He did not speak, but she heard him. He did not touch, but she felt him. And when the world turned sharp and cold and full of things that wanted her gone, he stood between her and everything else. They would call her story madness. They would say it defied reason. That a woman could not love a creature shaped by fang and shadow. But they would be wrong. Because love is not tame. It never was. And the moment she met Fenric, the moment she looked into his golden eyes beneath the blood moon, she knew. She had not fallen into this world. She had been called. Chapter 1. The Shattered Sky. The wind snapped the canvas of the tent like an angry beast. Evelyn Briar jolted awake, disoriented. She blinked against the pitch of night. The fire had gone out. Her hand groped for the flashlight by her sleeping bag, only to clutch a fistful of cold moss. Not nylon, not polyester, moss. Her breath caught. Where was the tent? She sat up too fast, her head spinning, skin clammy with sudden sweat. She expected the buzz of her students' murmuring voices nearby, the cooing of teenage campers giggling in other tents, the distant bark of the camp guide's radio, but there was only silence. Thick, primal silence. "Hello?" She called out, her voice weak, immediately swallowed by the trees. That's when she noticed the trees. Massive trunks loomed overhead, tangled with vines that pulsed faintly, glowed like bioluminescence beneath their bark. The stars above were wrong. There were too many of them, scattered in unfamiliar constellations across a sky that bled violet into black. Her limbs were trembling now, too stiff, to bear. Her fleece hoodie was gone. Her pajama pants were soaked at the knees. She was crouched beside a shallow pool of water, surrounded by fern-thick undergrowth. And a strange, musky smell filled her nose like damp fur, earth, and something beastly. She stumbled backward. Pain shot up her leg. She looked down and hissed. A gash curved around her calf, oozing reed. Her blood shimmered strangely against the ground, soaking into the moss like ink into paper. Panic roared up in her chest. She clutched her arms around herself. This is a dream. Just a dream. But the cold didn't feel like a dream. The wound throbbed like truth. The sky growled. Not thunder, not sky. A howl. Long, guttural, and close. She froze. Crack. Snap. Something was moving. Evelyn backed up instinctively, breathing hard, eyes darting through the ferns. The ground was soft, too soft, like stepping over a breathing creature. Her ankle caught on a root. She stumbled again, and then he emerged. Not a beast. Not a man. Something in between. A wolf twice the size of a grizzly, silver-gray fur slick with dew. His eyes glowed gold in the starlight, not savage but sharp, watchful, intelligent. Her scream died in her throat. He did not attack. Instead, he tilted his massive head, ears twitching as if listening to something deep within her. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, he took a step forward. She flinched. The creature paused. A strange moment passed between them. The air seemed to still. He lowered his massive head and nudged a bundle toward her, a bundle of root-veined leaves, filled with pale, fibrous stalks. Strange fruit, tubers? She blinked at it, then at him. "You brought me food." A low sound rumbled from his chest, half growl, half affirmation. He sat down, not inches from her, watching. The adrenaline began to drain, leaving confusion in its place. What are you?" Her voice cracked. The beast didn't answer, of course, but his gaze didn't waver. Evelyn ried the white stalk first. It was stringy and bitter, but she chewed. She needed the calories. Hunger gnawed her gut like a wild dog. He watched her eat. When she choked once, he nudged a vine toward her. She followed the curve to a thick marrow vine, its base bulging with sap. She bit into it. It was sweet, cooling, like aloe mixed with honey. She coughed and wiped her mouth. "Thanks," she said, her voice steadier now. Still, he said nothing, only remained there, enormous and silent. Eventually her body gave out. Between blood loss and exhaustion, her limbs grew heavy. She leaned back against a tree, The moss was warm. The air smelled faintly of frost blossoms, delicate, glimmering buds opening under moonlight. The wolf beast Hermine stumbled over what to call him, circled her once. Then, with a heavy thud, he lay beside her, close enough for her fingers to brush his thick fur. His body radiated heat. Instinct toward with reason. Do not trust wild animals. But he had fed her. He had not attacked. And somehow, in his gold eyes, she'd seen something. She curled slightly toward his warmth and whispered, "Don't eat me while I sleep, okay?" The creature let out a quiet huff. Evelyn awoke with a start. At first, she didn't know why. The forest was still bathed in the same ethereal twilight, though the starlight had shifted. The constellations, still strange, still countless, had drifted westward. She must have slept a few hours, maybe more. Her body ached, her leg pulsed with dull fire, and the wolf, he was gone. A tremor of unease tightened her chest. She sat up slowly, disoriented. Her stomach growled, but her focus snapped to her surroundings. The moss still bore his imprint. Steam rose faintly from it, as if the warmth of his massive frame had soaked into the ground. He left. The words tasted hollow. She wasn't sure why that disappointed her. She struggled to her feet, pain lancing up her calf. The gash was crusted with dry blood and dirt. She winced but forced herself upright. Survival first. She'd watched enough documentaries, read enough field guides. She needed water, a safe shelter, fire bandages if she could manage. She limped forward, navigating the thick fern floor. Trees towered above her like ancient sentinels, their limbs twisted in spirals. Faint glimmers of greenish-blue flitted in the distance, tiny insect-like creatures, or maybe spores. Whatever they were, they drifted lazily on unseen currents, casting faint shadows. She followed a slope downward, hoping for a stream or spring. As she hobbled, she took mental notes. Observe, adapt, survive. Dense canopy light filtered, pale blue, limited solar exposure, temperature mild but damp. Insects absent or silent, no birdsong. Something rustled. She spun, breath caught, but it was only a cluster of burrow mice, small, round creatures with glossy fur and twitching whiskers. They scattered into holes like spilled marbles. Evelyn let out a slow breath. At least not everything here wants to eat me. She descended farther, past strange fungi as tall as her knee, past marrow vines coiled like snakes around trees. Her calf burned with every step, but she pressed on. Then she heard it. Water. A trickle, faint but real. She pushed through a curtain of hanging moss and gasped. A glade opened before her, sunlight. Real sunlight, warm and golden. A stream wove like silver thread through the clearing, bordered by frost blossoms and bent-stemmed reeds. She staggered forward and dropped to her knees, plunging her hands into the water. It was cold, clean. She drank, splashing her face, letting herself breathe for the first time. Then she cleaned her wound. Tears pricked her eyes as she hissed from the sting, but she scrubbed it with a broken leaf and rinsed until the water ran clear. Using soft inner bark from a nearby vine, she wrapped her calf in crude, fibrous layers. It wasn't sterile, but it was something. The feeling of doing steadied her. When she finished, she sat back, staring at her reflection. Her face was streaked with dirt. Her auburn hair was tangled with leaves. Her lips were pale, but her eyes, they still held clarity. I'm still me. Evelyn Briar, 32, teacher, camper. I can survive this. The thought was fierce, even if the conviction rumbled. A low growl rolled from behind her. She spun. The wolf was back. His massive form stood half-shadowed at the edge of the glade, shoulders rising and falling with each slow breath. His eyes locked on hers. He padded forward, silent despite his weight. In his mouth, he carried something. A thick, leaf-wrapped bundle. Evelyn sat frozen as he approached, dropped it gently by her side, then stepped back. She unwrapped the bundle with shaking fingers. Inside were wheat blood beans, dark red, soft skinned legumes with a syrupy scent, and what looked like shredded root flesh and roasted dusk fowl strips. Cooked. Worm. You cook this? The wolf tilted his head. No response, of course, but something in his gaze, earnest, patient, made her chest ache. She took a bite. The sweetness burst across her tongue, followed by the smoky meat. Tears welled up again. It wasn't just edible. It was good. You brought me breakfast, she whispered, half in awe. I don't even know your name. The wolf made a low sound. A W huff. Her gaze softened. Should I give you one? He blinked. You're not a dog, she added quickly. You're something else. Smarter, wilder, but I need to call you something. She studied him. The gray of his fur shimmered like morning fog. His eyes were fierce but steady, like a storm held back by will alone. "Fenric," she said aloud, "that fits you." He didn't protest. She took it as agreement. "Okay, Fenric," she said with a shaky smile. "Looks like we're stuck together." He blinked once, then sat beside her, his massive body almost brushing hers. It wasn't just comfort, it was companionship. The realization hit her like sunlight through clouds. She was not alone. Later that day, Evelyn found herself limping through the forest beside Fenric. He moved ahead, silently parting the way with his body, his presence keeping the more curious wildlife at bay. She noticed how his ears would twitch, scanning the brush for movement. He was her sentinel guardian and guide. They found shelter beneath a massive tofu root tree, its interior hollowed and dry. With some coaxing, she managed to gather moss and smooth bark to create a soft bedding space. Fenric left for a time, returning with bundles of edible roots, and something resembling moss sap that congealed into jelly. As she chewed and worked, she caught him watching her, not like an animal, like a being trying to understand. Sometimes, she swore he wanted to speak. His mouth would open, breath would rasp, then close again, as if the shape of words were just beyond his reach. That night, curled beneath the sheltering roots, she whispered into the dark, "Why me?" No answer came, but she felt the heat of his body behind her, the brush of fur against her back, and somehow, that was enough. Chapter to the naming of shadows. The Wildrealm did not rise with the sun. Evelyn woke not to golden dawn, but to the soft glimmer of Hollow Grove's pale sky violet-blue haze that glowed like the underside of a jellyfish. The massive tofu root tree creaked around her, its hollow core warm with the breath of moss and sap. Fenric was gone again. She was growing used to it. He returned like the tide present when she most needed him, vanishing when instinct called him elsewhere. She didn't know where he went, or what he hunted. Part of her was afraid to ask. Stretching, she winced as her gaff tugged against its crude bark bandage. The pain had dulled. More of a background hum now, a sign she was healing. She took it as a win. She stepped out of the tree. The forest shimmered. Beams of diffused sky light caught on frost blossoms, blooming pale blue under the massive canopy. Strange birds not quite feathered, not quite scaled chattered in the high branches. A pair of elk oxen lumbered through the brush on the far side of a stream, their antlers thick with moss. It was surreal, otherworldly, but it was her world now. She knelt by the stream, filled her hands, drank deeply, then she froze. Across the bank, half hidden in the undergrowth, stood a figure. A man, or what once had been. He was hunched, elongated, with skin that looked stretched to thin over jutting bones. His face was jackal-like, twisted, and his eyes yellow, feral, a jackal kin. He grinned. Evelyn stumbled backward, water slipping from her fingers. The jackalkin didn't approach, but he watched. Then he tilted his head and mimicked a sound. Her voice. "You brought me breakfast," it croaked, in her exact tone. Her blood went cold. Fenric appeared in an explosion of movement. A streak of grey fury tore from the trees, slamming into the jackalkin with bone-rattling force. The creature yelped, tumbling into the ferns, limbs flailing. Fenric snarled, pinning him with massive paws, his fangs glinting. The jackalkin hissed something guttural, then vanished into the underbrush. Fenric didn't follow. He stood over the crushed foliage for a long moment, breath heaving. Then he turned. His eyes met Evelyn's. There was something different in them now. Not just intelligence, rage, protectiveness. She opened her mouth to speak, but he crossed the stream in a single bound and came to her, nuzzling her shoulder roughly, sniffing her face, her wound, her arms checking her. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I'm okay." He didn't retreat. Instead, he leaned into her, heavy and warm. She clung to his thick fur, heart still thundering. "I didn't know there were others," she murmured. "Monsters." Fenric huffed. He stepped back, then did something strange. He bowed his head, not like a wolf, like a man. Then his body trembled. Bones shifted, limbs twisted. Fur shrank, skin stretching as muscles rearranged. Evelyn gasped, watching with wide eyes as Fenric shifted not fully, not completely, but into something in between. Humanoid, still covered in fur but leaner, taller, with a face that echoed the beast's but with high cheekbones, a strong jaw. "Fenric," she whispered. He opened his mouth, struggled. Evie. His voice cracked, shaky. Robert, her name. He had said her name. "Evelyn," she whispered again, stepping closer. His golden eyes shimmered. Evelyn. Tears sprang to her eyes. "Yes, that's me." He reached out slowly, carefully. His hand paw was large, clawed, but trembling with restraint. He brushed a lock of her hair behind her ear, so gently it nearly undid her. Safe, he rasped. She nodded, swallowing thick emotion. You kept me safe. He looked like he wanted to say more, but then his wavered legs buckling. She caught him by instinct. Hey, no. No. It's okay, just breathe. He collapsed against her, heavy, almost unconscious. His body radiated heat like a furnace, skin fevered. His limbs began to shift back, muscles knotting, spine arching as the beast reclaimed him. A moment later, the full wolf lay in her lap, breathing ragged lie. Evelyn stroked his fur, heart aching with awe and fear. You're not just a beast. You're someone. His ear twitched. She smiled faintly, tears streaking her cheeks. I wish I knew your story. Later that afternoon, Evelyn paced inside the tree hollow, sorting the supplies Fenric had left: marrow vines, fire pods, sweet blood beans, and a few chunks of dried dusk-fowl meat. She'd fashioned containers from gourd shells and hardened leaf wrappings. Small progress, but it gave her focus. Her mind kept returning to the jackalkin, to the mimicry, to Fenric's transformation. What is this place, she thought. Who else is watching me? She was being drawn into something more than mere survival. A war, maybe, a destiny she hadn't chosen. She stared at Fenric's sleeping form curled on the moss bed, chest rising and falling. His transformation had drained him. He hadn't moved for hours, but in sleep he seemed peaceful. Almost human, and so heartbreakably alone. She whispered, You're not just a creature of instinct, are you? The question lingered in the warm stillness of the tree. The trees began to whisper at midday. Not the rustle of leaves or the snap of branches, this was subtler, lower, like breath threading through a flute's hollow. Evelyn paused mid-step, heart skittering as the sound rippled around her, brushing the edge of hearing. She looked up. Hollow groves stretched endlessly overhead. The trees here were massive, their trunks twisted into arches and spirals that reminded her of Gothic cathedrals. Moss flowed like drapery down their sides, and pale blossoms bloomed where bark should have split. There were no birds now, no burrow mice, only that whisper, like words just out of reach. Evelyn tightened her grip on the carved branch she used as a walking stick and pushed deeper into the grove. She hadn't meant to stray far from Fenric, but something had pulled at her, a feeling, a murmur in her chest. She didn't believe in magic, not really, but her body responded as if drawn by invisible thread. The sound grew clearer, like a voice calling across water, her own name. Evelyn. She froze, then spun. No one behind her, but light poured through the trees now in fractured golden shafts. Dust motes hung suspended in the beams. The air felt thick, warm, like breath on her neck. Evelyn Briar. The voice was not hers, not Fenric's. It was female, melodic, impossibly old. She stumbled forward through a curtain of hanging vines, and found herself in a clearing so still it hurt. The center of the space held a stone. No, not a stone. A monolith. Smooth, dark, veined with silver cracks like lightning frozen in rock. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. The whispers circled her. Sky seer, come awaken. She reached out, hand trembling. The moment her skin brushed the stone, the world dropped away. She stood beneath a storm. Dark clouds raised overhead. Ash rained from a red sky. Below her stretched a city of white stone towers, shattered, burning, broken. A voice echoed. You have returned, bearer of two worlds. Sky seer, flame heart, bound in soul and in shadow. A vision surged: Fenric, standing in human form, blood streaking his chest, his eyes full of grief. Another, a woman with violet eyes, weeping as she touched a glowing wound on Evelyn's stomach. Another, Evelyn herself, cloaked in feathers, wings stretching behind her as she raised her arms toward a silver moon. Then, darkness. The world snapped back. She fell to her knees, gasping, the moss damp against her palms. The monolith stood silent. No voice, no light, only the rustling trees and her ragged breathing. She pressed a shaking hand to her chest. Her heart pounded wildly. What was that? Her thoughts spun. Visions? Memories? Warnings? The title Sky Sea echoed in her mind, a haunting ring like a bell still tolling long after the strike. She wasn't hallucinating. She couldn't afford to think that way anymore. This place, the Wildrealm, held truths too vast, too ancient to deny. She was part of it now, whether she understood it or not. She didn't remember the way back, but the forests seemed to guide her. Roots curved to form steps. The underbrush parted with ease. She followed the growing scent of fire pod resin and moss, the familiar trail of Fenric's presence. When she emerged into their makeshift den, he was already awake. Fenric stood in the tree's mouth, watching her return. His golden eyes flickered over her face, reading something she hadn't even spoken aloud. She sank down beside the hearthstone and exhaled hard. I saw something. He padded forward, slow and deliberate. She met his eyes. You've known, haven't you? This place is more than forest and teeth. He sat in front of her, gaze steady. Evelyn reached up and placed her hand against his chest, just over the place where she imagined his heart would be. I think I'm part of something I don't understand. He pressed his forehead gently to hers. They stayed like that for a long time, not speaking, just breathing. That night, as the forest sang its strange lullaby of wind and spirit, Evelyn curled beside Fenric in the hollow of the tree. I was a teacher, she whispered into the dark. Back home, I taught children. I had routines, a favorite mug, a silly plant I always forgot to water. Fenric's ear twitched. I was lonely though. I never told anyone that. I thought I was fine with it. She paused. I don't think I ever felt seen the way you look at me. The silence was filled with breath and pulse and forest. She pressed closer. I don't know what's coming, but if it means staying beside you I'll find a way. His tail brushed her side, and even though the shadows whispered outside, Evelyn slept soundly for the first time since falling into this strange new world. Chapter 3 Fire and Fang. The scream came at dawn. Evelyn jolted awake, heart hammering. It wasn't human, it was guttural, broken, the kind of sound an animal makes when it knows it's dying. She scrambled to her feet, fumbling with the sharp rock knife Fenric had shaped for her days ago. Fenric was already gone. His scent lingered, a wild musk mixed with charcoal and pine resin, but his body had vanished from the nest of moss and bark they'd built together. Another scream tore through the trees, closer this time. Evelyn ran. The ground was uneven, slick with dew and shadow. She slipped once, caught herself on a low-hanging root, and pushed forward, ducking branches and leaping over snaking vines. When she broke through the underbrush into a wide clearing, her breath caught in her throat. Fenric stood alone against 3 merle and GS. They were taller than she expected, leather, scaled, and glistening, like eels wrapped in armor. Their limbs ended in hooked talons. Gills flared along their necks as they hissed, spitting water like venom. One circled left, another right. The third lunged straight for Fenric's throat. He met it midair. Their bodies collided with a crack, and Fenric's jaws clamped around its arm, shattering it in one bite. The merle and G shrieked, writhing, but Fenric didn't stop. He threw it against a tree, turned, and faced the others. But Evelyn saw it, the tremble in his legs. He was still weakened from shifting, from protecting her, from trying to speak, and they were too many. Without thinking, she grabbed a fire-poured fruit from her satchel, bright red and egg-shaped, and slammed it against a rock. It burst with a hiss, releasing heat like steam. Flame sparked where juice splattered the moss. The nearest merle and G shrieked and recoiled from the sudden blaze. Evelyn grabbed 2 more and hurled them, aiming near the feet of the advancing creature. The small eruptions forced it to retreat with a wet snarl. She ran to Fenric's side, pressing her shoulder against his heaving frame. I'm not letting them take you, she whispered fiercely. He growled low approval, a warning she couldn't tell, but he didn't push her away. The remaining merle and G bared its teeth. Evelyn raised her crude knife. The creature charged. Time slowed. She saw its claws, its open jaw, the shimmer of its scales, and then Fenric moved, not away, but with her. Together, he knocked the creature off balance, just as Evelyn stabbed upward, plunging the stone blade beneath its exposed gills. Blood hissed against her skin, warm and oily. The merle and G thrashed, shrieked, then fell. Dead Evelyn stood frozen, panting, blade slick with blood. Fenric nudged her gently. She looked up into his eyes and something passed between them. Not words, not even thought. A bond, forged in flame and fang. She wasn't prey, she wasn't protected. She was his equal, and the Wildrealm had just learned her name. They burned the merle and G bodies on a pyre of dried marrow vine and mosswood bark. The flame spat blue and orange, releasing a noxious tang that curled in Evelyn's nose. Fenric watched silently, his golden eyes reflecting the fire like twin embers. When she returned to his side, he leaned into her, not heavily, just enough to share warmth. You're hurt, she said softly, touching a shallow gash on his side. He licked her wrist in response. She rolled her eyes but smiled. Right, that's your way of saying stop fussing. Fenric huffed. She took that as a yes. I need to train, she said, staring at the knife in her hand. I need to know how to defend us. He cocked his head. I want you to teach me. Fenric blinked, then stood, and without warning he bounded toward her. Evelyn gasped, stumbling backward, blade raised, but he didn't strike. He circled her, fast, sudden, nudging her shoulder, her hip, her back, testing, prodding. She slashed once, twice. He dodged easily, too easily. Okay, she muttered. So I suck. He snorted, then slowed, came behind her and placed one massive paw gently over her hand, guided the motion. Not a slash, a thrust. Then he stepped back, nodded. They spent hours in the glade, practicing movements, breathing, rhythm. She stumbled, swore, bled once when her blade slipped, but she learned. And when they rested beneath the towering trees, muscles aching, she looked up at him and whispered, "Thank you." Fenric leaned down, brushed his nose against her temple, and for the first time she didn't feel like a stranger in this world. She felt like a force. The rain came soft and steady that evening, sifting through the canopy in cool silver threads. Evelyn sat beneath the overhang of a gnarled tofu root branch, knees hugged to her chest, watching as droplets beaded on moss leaves and glided to the earth like falling stars. Fenric was beside her, silent, as always, but closer than usual. His massive flank pressed lightly to her arm, warm and steady. She'd never felt so tired, or so alive. "I was a terrible athlete in school," she said, voice low, half laughing. "I used to fake cramps to get out of running the mile. And now look at me knife-fighting scale-deal monsters in a prehistoric hell forest." Fenric gave a low huff. She swore it was a chuckle. She shifted, turning toward him. "You probably think I'm soft." His ears flicked. "Okay, maybe I was," she admitted. "Before this. Before you." She pulled her braid over her shoulder, twisting it idly. Mud clung to her arms, her shirt was torn, and her feet were blistered, but none of it mattered. "I used to be a teacher. History, middle school. I thought that was hard." Fenric lifted his head slightly, golden eyes meeting hers. "I was good at it, connecting dots, patterns. I liked helping people see where they came from, so they could decide where they were going." She looked down. "Funny, isn't it? Now I don't even know where I came from anymore." A pause. Then Fenric shifted just slightly so his muzzle rested gently on her thigh. A gesture of comfort, maybe even trust. Her breath caught. She reached down and brushed her fingers through the thick fur behind his ear. "You listen better than most humans I've known." A quiet moment passed, thick with rain and leaves and heartbeat. "I wonder if this is what fate feels like," she whispered. Heavy and impossible, but right. In the days that followed, Evelyn reigned. Fenric taught her without words, through repetition, through movement. He'd spar with her in short bursts, then pause, correct her with a nudge or a paw, then begin again. She grew faster, more precise. She learned to roll, to feint, to strike only when it mattered. They hunted together small creatures, at first dusk-feathered fowl, sharp-toothed burrow hares. She learned to stalk with quiet feet and still breath. Fenric showed her how to identify animal trails, which bark contained drinkable sap, and where frost blossoms grew with natural healing properties, and she taught him too. She carved basic letters into flat stones, teaching him her name, then his. He couldn't speak them, not fully, but she saw him try, forming them with guttural effort. She showed him fire-making techniques with flint and meravine resin. When she scraped out a tiny cooking pit lined with clay, he watched with curious, tilted eyes. At night, they slept side by side. Some part of her had stopped wondering if this was wrong. Nothing in this place made sense by human standards, and yet every touch, every shared glance, every slow breath beside his felt true. One evening, as they nestled into the hollow beneath a canopy of fireglass mushrooms, Evelyn whispered, "Do you have a tribe, Fenric?" He didn't answer, but his tail stiffened. "I wonder if they're like you, or if you left them, like I left mine." The silence stretched between them. She reached for his fur, tangling her fingers through it. "I want to understand you. Not just what you do, but who you are." A low sound rumbled in his throat. Not warning, not growl, a pained memory. He pressed closer, and she knew without asking. He had been alone for a long time too. On the 7th night after the Merlingy attack, the dreams began. Evelyn stood in a clearing drenched in silver light. Fenric stood at her side, not as a beast, but fully human, tall and lean, eyes still gold, hair ash gray, long and wild. His face was unreadable, caught between sorrow and longing. In her dream, she wore feathers across her shoulders and held a blade of bone and moonlight. Before them rose a vast, crumbling temple, columns made of petrified trees, arches of stone pulsing with old energy. Inside, voices whispered, "Sky Seer, wake the bones, call the storm." She turned toward Fenric, but he was gone. replaced by a mirror of herself, cloaked in flame. She gasped awake, sweat clinging to her skin despite the cool night air. Fenric was already watching her, like he always knew. She reached for him instinctively and he came, laying beside her, his muzzle resting near her ribs. She curled into him, trembling. "What does it mean?" she whispered. "Why me?" No answer came, but she felt the earth stir beneath her cheek, and the wind sighed through the leaves above like an old lullaby. Something ancient had opened, and it had seen her. Chapter for shadows beneath the stone. The trail twisted beneath her boots, winding like a serpent through the underbelly of Hollow Grove. Evelyn moved cautiously, ducking beneath low-hanging roots and moss-draped branches, her stone blade sheathed at her hip, her senses prickling with a strange anticipation. Fenric moved ahead of her, silent and swift, his fur flashing silver in the dim light. He had become restless over the past 2 days, spacing the perimeter of their den, ears pinned, nose always twitching as if catching a scent just beyond reach. And then this morning, without preamble, he had nudged her awake and begun walking. No growl, no explanation, just urgency. She'd followed. Now, they were deeper in the forest than she had ever dared go alone. The light had changed, no longer the soft bioluminescence she'd grown used to, but a dim green twilight that seemed to come from the moss itself. The air was thicker, heavy with the scent of iron and bark. The trees no longer grew in chaos. They stood in perfect rows, massive trunks twisted into smooth columns that pulsed faintly beneath her fingertips. It felt sacred, or ancient, or both. "Where are you taking me?" she asked, her voice hushed out of instinct, though she knew Fenric wouldn't answer. Still, he glanced back, his gaze intense, and then they emerged into it, the clearing. It wasn't a clearing in the usual sense. No grass, no sun, just a vast, flat space of stone, veined with silver lines that spiraled outward from a central slab. There, seated on a throne made of fused root and bone, was a dire wolf. Not Fenric, not like him, older, larger. His fur was nearly white, streaked with grey and the dull rust of old battle scars. One eye gleamed pale blue, the other was missing, replaced with a socket filled with obsidian. Another dire wolf stood in a loose circle around him, half in beast form. Others partially shifted. Some looked at Evelyn with curiosity, others with suspicion. One, a sleek she-wolf with a mane of dark fur and a long scar down her muzzle, snarled low, nearer one eye. Evelyn knew her name without being told, knew it like a memory not her own. The elder dire wolf froze from his throne. His voice rumbled like thunder over stone. "So the Sky Seer walks among us again." Evelyn's breath caught. "I don't know what that means," she said, heart thudding. "She dreams," one of the wolves muttered. "She saw the temple," another growled. Nearer circled Evelyn slowly. "You smell of ashen blood, like the last one." "The last one?" Evelyn asked, voice barely steady. "The last Sky Seer," the old wolf lord said. "Before the fall of Arthur, before the moon cracked." Evelyn swallowed. "I'm not her." "No," he said, "but you are chosen." He stepped closer, and the other wolves parted like ripples on water. Fenric moved between them, a low growl rising from his chest. The old wolf lord lifted a paw, stopping him. "Easy, young Fang. I do not threaten her. We have waited too long for this meeting." Evelyn looked between them. "What is a Sky Seer?" Silence fell. Then the elder spoke. "She who bridges worlds, who speaks the name of the old light, who holds the hearts of beast and human alike, and in doing so awakens the cycle of return." Evelyn's mind reeled. "That sounds like prophecy." "It is," Nira said coldly, "and prophecy brings war." "I didn't ask for this," Evelyn whispered. "I just woke up here." "You were called," the old wolf lord replied. "Not summoned, not stolen, called." She shook her head. "I'm a schoolteacher, a human. I'm not some goddess." "But you dream like one," he said. She went quiet. The air crackled softly. The wolves waited. Finally, the elder gestured to the stone at the center of the clearing. "Kneel." "What?" "You were seen. Now be known." Fenric growled again, but Evelyn placed a hand on his flank. "It's okay," she murmured. Then she stepped forward, her heart in her throat, and knelt upon the central slab. The stone hummed beneath her knees, and then it glowed, not brightly but in veins. Lines of silver raced outward, tracing ancient runes that spiraled across the clearing like a great web. The wolves gasped, backing away. Only Fenric stayed close, and Evelyn heard it again, that voice from the monolith. "Sky Seer, flame heart, bound in soul and shadow." A second voice, deep, aching, whispered, "Two hearts, one path." Her gaze rose to Fenric, and his eyes burned not with fire, but with recognition. The light faded. The stone cooled beneath Evelyn's knees, but its echo remained in her blood like stardust humming behind her eyes. She rose slowly. The wolves were silent. Even nearer one eye, who had paced like a predator from the moment Evelyn entered, now stood utterly still. Her pale eye glinted beneath her ragged brow. She wasn't impressed. She was waiting for Evelyn to stumble, to flinch, to prove she was no more than a human girl with a few strange dreams and a lucky beast for a guardian. The old wolf lord spoke, his voice as grave and unhurried as wind moving through the roots of mountains. She carries the mark. The grove bears witness. The bond has been lit. A low murmur rippled through the circle of Fenkin. Nira stepped forward. And what if it's false light? Her voice was hard as bone. She's untested, unchanged. She hasn't bled for us. Evelyn stiffened. I never asked to lead anything. You didn't, Nira said, circling her. But prophecy does not require permission. She protected Fenric, one of the younger wolves growled. She fought the Merle and GS. She bled with him, added another. That counts for something. Nira's voice was quiet now, too quiet. It's not enough. She turned fully to Evelyn. Fight me. Evelyn blinked. What? Nira stepped into the circle of stone. If you want to stand among us, not above, not below, but beside, you must prove your teeth. Fenric moved immediately, a warning growl rising from deep within his chest. But the old wolf lord raised a paw. She must choose. Nira's gaze never wavered. No claws, no fangs, no beast form, hand to hand, as we did in the old moons. I don't want to fight you, Evelyn said. I'm not a warrior. Nira took a step closer. But you are Fenric's. You slept beside him. You carry his scent, his fire. That makes you kin or prey. The words sliced deeper than Evelyn expected. She looked at Fenric, whose muscles coiled with tension. His golden eyes held hers. You don't have to, they said. But another voice stirred in her chest. You already have. She stepped forward. Nira smiled, slow and sharp. The circle widened. Fenric stood at the edge, shoulders rigid. Evelyn stripped off her outer cloak and stepped into the center. Her heart beat against her ribs like a war drum. Nira stretched, muscles rippling under her leathers. You're fast with fire, she said, but that blade of yours won't help you here. I didn't bring it, Evelyn replied, squaring her stance. Nira lunged. The blow came fast, almost too fast. Evelyn ducked instinctively and twisted, catching Nira's arm and using the momentum to throw her sideways. The wolves howled in surprise. Nira rolled to her feet and laughed. Good. She came again, kicks and jabs, sharp and efficient. Evelyn blocked one, then two, but the third caught her in the ribs. Pain lanced through her, but she didn't fall. Instead, she pivoted and landed a punch to Nira's stomach. They broke apart, breathing hard. Nira grinned. You're not just Fenric's little flower. Evelyn spat blood to the side. You're not as scary as you think. The next exchange was brutal. They locked arms, feet slipping on more slick stone. Nira tried to throw her. Evelyn drove her knee into Nira's thigh. They hit the ground together, rolling. Evelyn clawed for leverage. Nira landed a sharp elbow to her shoulder. Evelyn cried out. Nira straddled her. Yield. Evelyn's vision blurred. She saw Fenric at the edge of the ring, his muscles straining against the rules of his people. But Evelyn didn't yield. She rammed her head into Nira's. The she-wolf reeled. Evelyn twisted, got her knees beneath her, and shoved upward with everything she had. Nira hit the ground hard. Evelyn pounced, pressed her forearm against Nira's throat. You yield, she said through clenched teeth. Nira's good eye narrowed. Then she chuckled, and tapped her fingers against Evelyn's wrist. Enough. Evelyn rolled off her, panting, her ribs on fire. The wolves erupted in howls, not mocking, but celebratory. Nira sat up, rubbing her bruised jaw. Not bad for a leg. Evelyn couldn't help the tired smile curling her lips. You're insane. Nira shrugged. It's tradition. The old wolf lord stepped forward. The Sky Seer has proved her will. The bond with Fenric is no accident. It is earned. Evelyn blinked, sweat from her eyes. What bond? But the wolves were already moving, forming a new circle closer this time. Inclusive. Fenric approached her last, eyes full of quiet pride. She reached for him and he met her halfway, pressing his forehead to hers. The stone beneath their feet pulsed again, faint and warm. And the Wildrealm whispered, one soul, two hearts. Chapter 5 Emberfang Pact. The Emberfang plains burned gold beneath the sky, not with fire, but with light rippling waves of ochre grass, each blade tipped in reed. The heat shimmered off the earth in low, dancing mirages. Winds rolled through the tall stalks like restless spirits, whispering in a language Evelyn had stopped pretending to understand. She walked beside Fenric, boots crunching against sun-baked dirt. Dust clung to her skin, her braids stuck to the back of her neck, and every muscle ached from the 4-day trek, but she didn't complain. The plains were open, exposed, unlike the shadowed security of Hollow Grove. Here there was nowhere to hide. Predators watched from high crags, vultures with velvet wings circled the sky, and the Fenkin of Ember Fang. They were watching too. The first arrow landed just inches from her boot. The second buried itself in the dirt at Fenric's paws. Evelyn froze. From the ridge above, figures emerged leaner than the Hollow Grove dire wolves, with red-tinted fur and bone-painted faces. Their bodies shimmered with sweat and war paint, their eyes burning bright with suspicion. A deep voice called down in the old tongue. Fenric answered, calm and sharp, never moving from Evelyn's side. She didn't understand the words, but she knew the meaning. They were being tested. A third figure leapt from the ridge, a beast mid-shift, half man, half wolf, his mane blazing orange like wildfire. He landed in a crouch, then stood to full height. He was taller than Fenric, and laughing. Well, the warrior said in broken common, the moon's favorite mutt returns. And with a 2-leg on his leash, Fenric growled low. The warrior bared his teeth, amused. Relax, Grey Fang, I meant no insult. I only wonder how deep your madness runs. Evelyn stepped forward before she could think better of it. If you're going to speak to me, she said, do it without calling me a leash. The warrior arched a brow. It's peaks. She speaks, she corrected coldly, and she fights. A flicker of interest passed through his gaze. Then follow, he said at last. The Ember Lord waits. The Ember Fang encampment was a sprawl of stone circles, fanged totems, and pit fires that never went out. Tents woven from sun hide and obsidian feathers flapped in the dry wind. Children chased each other with bone whistles. Warriors sparred in the open, their claws sheathed in reed dust. Evelyn walked at Fenric's side, trying to ignore the stares. Every gaze burned, some with curiosity, others with contempt. The Ember Lord sat on a raised platform of carved basalt, his body draped in a cloak of thorn wolf pelts. His muzzle was streaked with white. One hand clutched a spear as tall as Evelyn. His eyes were hollow with age but bright with cunning. Fenric of Hollow Grove, he said, I thought you dead, or worse, mated. A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Fenric dipped his head once. This is Evelyn Briar, he said, clear, unbroken. In their tongue, gasps. Even Evelyn stiffened. She turned to him. You spoke. He nodded once. The Ember Lord's gaze narrowed. So the mute grows a voice. And it's for her. She is mine, Fenric said. Evelyn's breath caught. Not because it wasn't Rue, but because he had claimed it aloud in front of his people, in front of the wild. Something in her chest unraveled and tied itself again tighter. The Ember Lord grunted. And what does your human claim? Evelyn stepped forward. I came to speak of alliance. The Ashborn are gathering. Jackal kin have been seen in Hollow Grove. The Wildrealm is shifting. You presume much. I presume survival matters to all of us, she said. Silence. Then the Ember Lord stood. His voice boomed. Let her burn. Let her rise. If she wants the Ember Fang pact, she must walk the coal fire path. Fenric growled. No, she's not. I accept, Evelyn said. Every head turned. Fenric's eyes widened. He stepped toward her. No. She looked up at him, jaw set. You gave me fire. You gave me strength. Let me use it. He stared at her. For a long breath, neither moved. Then he stepped back, reluctantly. The Ember Lord nodded. Prepare her. Later that night, Evelyn stood at the base of a narrow canyon. The stars stretched bright and sharp overhead. Before her lay the coal fire path, a winding trail of obsidian stone, heated by underground fire vents, glowing in patches of dull reed. At the far end, a lone torch flickered beside a carved stone marked with the Ember Fang seal. She would walk it barefoot, alone, and unflinching. A trial by heat, by will. Ember Fang law. A warrior approached with a red cloth. Evelyn reached out and tied it around her wrist, her pulse pounding. When she stepped onto the first glowing stone, the heat bloomed against her soles like an open palm. She clenched her teeth, and kept walking. The first few steps stung. By the fifth, Evelyn's feet throbbed. The obsidian stones of the coal fire path radiated a pulsing heat, not enough to burn flesh immediately, but hot enough to blister skin within seconds. Her breath hissed through clenched teeth as she paced forward, soles slapping glowing stone, then darker patch, then glow again. Heat coiled up her legs like smoke, settling in her bones. She focused on the torch at the end. It was a small flame, almost insignificant, but it danced in defiance of the dark. Around her, ember-fanged wolves lined the ridges above the canyon, silent as statues, watching, judging. She would not fall for them, but her vision swam, her legs shook. Each step left more of her behind: moisture, pain, fragments of the person who'd first stumbled into this world with nothing but a ruined sock and half a granola bar. Now? She was a woman of the Wildrealm, and she would not crawl. Not now, not ever. The stone burned hotter halfway through. A hiss of steam curled upward from a vent just inches from her foot. Her skin pricked lead. The pain was sharp and steady, radiating through her nerves like light through cracks. She stumbled, almost fell. A gasp rose from the watchers above. Evelyn looked up and saw him, Fenric, perched atop a basalt outcrop, his fur catching the torchlight like silver fire, his golden eyes locked with hers, not pleading, not pitying, but believing. She steadied, and stepped forward again. When she reached the final stone, she dropped to one knee, grabbed the torch from its sconce, and slammed it into the carved seal with every ounce of strength she had left. Flame erupted. A ring of fire roared to life along the cliff edge, illuminating the canyon in molten light. The ember fang howled, and Evelyn, gasping and wild-eyed, stood in the heart of it, feet blistered, legs shaking, but unbroken. The Ember Lord's voice boomed down from above. She bears the pact. Evelyn turned toward him, raising the torch in trembling triumph. She bears the wild. They treated her feet with marrow jelly and frost blossom poultice. The pain was real, raw, but beneath it pride. Victory. She lay on a coat of stitched hide in the Emberfang healer's tent, the torch still resting by her side. Outside, drums had begun to beat. A feast. For her. Fenric appeared at the tent flap, ducking inside without a word. He knelt beside her. She looked up at him. "You're angry." His jaw flexed. "You think I should have let you speak for me?" she said. "That I overstepped?" "No," he said. She blinked. "You were fire," he added. A silence passed. Then he reached for her foot. She winced, but let him unwrap the poultice, his claws surprisingly gentle. He examined the burns, then replied the cool mash without a word. "I don't regret it," she whispered. "I know." She looked at him again, and something had changed. He was no longer just her protector. He was her equal, and her tether. "I felt you," she said, voice soft. "Out there, on the ridge. It kept me upright." He didn't reply. Instead, he brushed a lock of hair from her face. His touch lingered, and this time, she didn't pull away. "Fenric," she whispered. His hand cupped her jaw. Her breath hitched. They had slept beside each other for weeks out of comfort, warmth, need. But this was a choice. A bridge crossed with eyes open. He leaned in. Slowly, carefully, she met him halfway. Their lips touched, tentative at first, a question written in heat and hesitation. Then deeper, more certain. His mouth was warm, and his hand curled at the back of her neck like a promise. She pressed against him, fingers tangling in his thick fur, tasting earth and smoke and something wilder still. When they pulled apart, they were both breathing fast. Neither spoke. Words would have broken it. Fenric touched his forehead to hers, and for the first time, Evelyn felt it not just in her chest but in her soul. The bond, the real one, forged not by prophecy, but by choice. The drums played on through the night, and beneath their rhythm, wrapped in hides and heat and each other's breath, Evelyn knew. The Wildrealm had not broken her, it had remade her, and in the embers of that fire, something new was born. Not just survival, not just alliance, but love, untamed and true. Chapter 6. Hollow Grove reclaimed. The scent of smoke reached them long before the treetops came into view. Evelyn gripped Fenric's fur tighter from where she rode astride his back. The wind whipped her braid behind her, and the trees blurred past in streaks of green and gold as he ran faster than he ever had before. His muscles coiled like springs beneath her legs, each stride a thunderclap against the earth. But she could feel it in him. The tension, the rage. Hollow Grove was burning, and they were too late. They broke through the last rise of ridge just as the sun dipped below the horizon. What had once been home twisting tofu root trees, Mara vine gardens, the warm scent of moss and ash was now half consumed in flame. Fire crackled through the branches. A thick plume of black smoke twisted into the violet sky, blotting out stars. Evelyn's breath hitched as she took in the wreckage, fallen trees, clawed earth, shattered fire pits, and blood, too much blood. Fenric snarled. Evelyn slid off his back, heart hammering. "Where are they?" A howl rose from the east, ragged and pained. Another answered from the south, clearer bram. Without hesitation, Fenric took off toward the sound. Evelyn followed on foot, weaving through scorched undergrowth, her knife drawn, her boots slick with ash. She found them near the heart of the grove, where the roots spiraled upward into the canopy like ribs of an ancient beast. Bram stood over a fallen wolf, his white fur added with dirt and gore. His normally cocky grin was gone, his expression was tight, jaw clenched, eyes wild. Nira crouched beside him, bleeding from a long gash down her flank, one eye swollen shut. They turned as Fenric skidded to a halt, Evelyn stumbling behind. "Took you long enough," Bram snapped, though his voice cracked with relief. Nira staggered to her feet. "We held them back from the heart tree, barely." "Who attacked?" Evelyn asked, already knowing. "Ashborn," Bram spat. "Half-shifted monsters. They came from the west ridge. Took 2 hours ungutted the sapling circle." "Did they breach the crystal spring?" Fenric growled. "No," Nira said, "but they tried. We buried 5. Evelyn felt her throat close. She had thought she was ready for war. She hadn't been ready for this. Fenric looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, his eyes asked for something. Direction. She straightened. "We need to secure the grove's perimeter. Post Emberfang scouts if they're willing. Nira, gather those who can still fight. Bram, take me to the crystal spring. I want to see what they tried to breach." Bram blinked. "You're giving orders now." "Yes," Evelyn said, "and unless you want to burn with the rest of Hollow Grove, follow them." Nira gave a wolfish grin, even through blood. "She's earned it." Bram just sighed and waved her forward. "Fine. Come on, Skyseer, but don't trip over any corpses." They moved quickly through the shadows. The forest was scarred but not dead. Many of the trees still stood. Survivors both wolf and human-shaped emerged from the brush, eyes widening when they saw her. She was no longer the strange outsider Fenric had rescued from a puddle of mud. She was something else now. A leader. A mate. A force. The path narrowed until it opened into a cavernous hollow beneath the roots of the great heart tree. The air he smelled cleaner, cooler. At its center bubbled the crystal spring, a pool of clear, glowing water nestled within a cradle of stone and frost blossom vines. Evelyn stepped to its edge and looked down. The surface shimmered. With memory, she saw her own face reflected there, cut and bruised, eyes too wide. Then it shimmered again. Her reflection wore feathers. Her eyes glowed. "Skyseer. I saw one of them here," Bram said, kneeling. "An Ashborn. Bigger than the rest. Scarred face, black eyes." He hissed when he touched the water. Evelyn reached down, touched the surface. The water accepted her without resistance. "Cool. Alive. Then this place matters," she said softly. "It's more than sacred. It's protection." "They hate it," Bram said, "like it burns them." "Then we defend it at all costs." She stood. "Fenric and I will take first watch. Get the others to rest and regroup. We strike at dawn." Bram hesitated. "You sure?" She met his eyes. "We're not prey. Not anymore." He gave a crooked smile. "Damn right." That night, Evelyn stood beside Fenric beneath the heart tree. Smoke still rose on the horizon, but the stars broke through above them, shattered constellations, strange and beautiful. She leaned into him, her arm brushing his. "We'll rebuild," she said quietly. He didn't answer, but he didn't have to. His warmth was enough, his presence a vow. And when she looked at the grove, still standing in spite of blood and fire, Evelyn knew the truth in her bones. This was her home, and she would fight for it. Dawn arrived in silence, not with birdsong or the rustle of leaves, but with a stillness that rang louder than rams. The Wildrealm held its breath, as if it too sensed what was coming. Evelyn stood at the edge of the clearing, dressed in ash-smeared leather, her hands tight around the hilt of her stone blade. Beside her, Fenric crouched low in beast form, ears pricked, tail flicking with anticipation. His fur shimmered like steel in the morning light. Across the field, movement stirred in the mist. The Ashborn came like shadows poured into flesh. Twisted were beasts with 2 long limbs, sinewy frames hunched like broken spiders. Their eyes glowed orange-red, and their snarls cracked like dry bone. Claws scraped the earth. Some crawled, others walked, none of them human anymore. There were more than Evelyn expected. Too many. Nira appeared beside them, one arm in a sling, her blade gripped in the other. "They don't wait anymore. They smell fear. They'll smell fire instead," Evelyn said. From behind her, Emberfang warriors emerged from the trees, fangs bared and teeth painted with coal. Bram led them, wild-eyed, to daggers already twirling in his hands. "Tense as I kill more than you," he muttered to Nira. "You can't count past 5, she replied. Fenric let out a low growl, silencing the banter. The lead Ashborn hissed and charged. The clash hit like thunder. Evelyn surged forward, her blade finding the throat of the first beast before it could leap. Blood spattered across her face, hot and oily. Behind her, Ember Fangs tore into the fray, howling, their claws flashing like silver death. Fenric moved like lightning through fur and fang, through teeth and fire. Every time one of the Ashborn lunged for her, he was there intercepting, breaking bones with his jaws. But they kept coming, stronger, wilder. Evelyn ducked beneath the swipe, stabbed upward, and rolled to avoid another snapping jaws. Her breath burned in her lungs, her arms ached, but she didn't stop, couldn't. She'd bled for Hollow Grove. She would die for it if she had to. Then the ground trembled. For a heartbeat, everyone froze. The soil cracked beneath the heart tree, and something rose. Not beast, not man, but root and shadow. A towering figure emerged from the fissure, a creature of bark and bone, a skeletal god with antlers of petrified wood and eyes of glowing emerald. Its body was draped in vines that pulsed like veins. From its chest hung the sigil of a broken moon. The battlefield fell silent. Even the Ashborn stepped back. Evelyn stared in horror. What is that? The Hollow King, Nero whispered. It's a myth, a tale for cubs. It's real, Bram breathed. Unpissed, the Hollow King raised a hand. The trees groaned. Roots burst from the soil, snatching Emberfang warriors, choking the air. Fenric leapt aside just in time to avoid a barbed tendril that would have split him in two. Evelyn's eyes locked with the creature's and she felt it. A pool, a voice in her mind. Sky Seer, thief of balance, return what was broken. She stumbled backward. No, I didn't take anything. Your bond, the voice hissed. Your blood. The world fractures because of you. The Hollow King raised his arm again. And Fenric roared. He lunged at the creature, his claws slicing deep into bark flesh. It screeched, a sound like 1,000 trees screaming at once. Evelyn surged forward, joining the fight, blade plunging into its leg, again and again. The Hollow King swatted her aside like a leaf. She hit the ground hard, vision spinning. And then, a hand grabbed hers. Bram up. Now. She rose, spitting blood, and together they charged. Nearer came from the side, throwing a torch at its base. The flames didn't catch, but something else did. Evelyn reached into her satchel, pulled out the broken shard of the Emberfang torch she had carried from the trial. Still warm, still glowing, she threw it. It struck the creature's core, and for the first time, it screamed. The fire caught in the vines. The vines burned like veins of oil. The Hollow King thrashed, limbs flailing, roots retracting. Fenric leapt again, tearing bark from its throat. And Evelyn, bleeding, furious, drove her blade straight through its glowing eye. The light died. The creature collapsed in on itself, cracking into ash and dust. And then, silence. The Ashborn hissed in terror, and fled. What remained of the grove held its breath. Then, howls. Triumphant, wild howls from every throat. The grove lived. And Evelyn, drenched in ash, leaned against Fenric's massive shoulder and whispered, "We're still here." He shifted beside her slowly, rising from beast to man, until his hands were on her shoulders, and his lips were on hers, fierce, wild, desperate. Not just a kiss. A claim. A vow. A love that would not die. Chapter 7: The Return of Lyra Shaw. The portal opened like a wound in the air. One moment, the forest was stilled, appled light filtering through soot-stained leaves. The next, a pulse of pressure bent the air sideways, crackling with ozone and the high-pitched whine of unnatural magic. Evelyn spun toward the sound, her blade already halfway drawn. Fenric stepped in front of her in an instant, teeth bared, claws unsheated. And then, she stepped through, a figure, human, tall, pale, blonde hair matted with leaves, boots far too clean for Hollow Grove soil. Lyra Shaw. She stumbled through the swirling rift with a gasp, one arm raised as if to block the forest itself. Her wide blue eyes started between trees and walls, and ruins until they landed on Evelyn. Evie? Evelyn lowered her weapon, stunned. Lyra? Her former co-worker blinked, dazed. Oh my god. I thought I was hallucinating again. The rift snapped shut behind her with a sound like a slammed vault. No way back. Evelyn stepped forward slowly, her heartbeat uneven. How are you here? Lyra sagged to her knees, clutching her head. I was camping. In Wyoming. Same place you vanished. Just woke up in the woods. Everything's insane. I found a cave with writing on the walls. Saw things. And then, she looked up, eyes wild. You're real. You're actually real. Evelyn crouched beside her. I am. Lyra exhaled hard. And what is that? She pointed directly at Fenric, who had yet to move. His golden eyes narrowed to slits. Evelyn stood protectively in front of him. That's Fenric. He's not what you think. Lyra stared. He's a giant wolf. He's more than that. I can see that, Lyra said flatly. He's with you? There was something sharp beneath her tone. Evelyn nodded. Yes. We live here. This is our home. Lyra let out a dry, shaky laugh. You've been gone for months and you've gone full feral wilderness, girlfriend. Evelyn's mouth tensed. Lyra, this world isn't a vacation. We fought tooth and claw to survive, and you've clearly adapted. Her gaze slid to Fenric again. Is he safe? He's the reason I'm alive. Lyra's smile didn't reach her eyes. Well, that's romantic in a disturbing, Twilight but murder-y way. Behind them, Nira stepped into the clearing, blood still crusted on her shoulder, flanked by Bram, who held a crooked grin that said he'd love nothing more than to chase the new arrival up a tree. Another stray? Nira drawled. How many more humans does your sky want to spit at us? Friend of yours? Bram asked Evelyn. Sort of, Evelyn muttered. Lyra stood slowly. Okay, let's rewind. I came here by accident. I want to go home. You know, with running water and phones and people who aren't half wolf. Evelyn flinched. Fenric growled softly, not menacing, just warning. Lyra folded her arms. Tell me you found a way out, please. Evelyn hesitated, and Lyra saw it. Her expression shifted from fear to accusation. You can't get back, can you? No, Evelyn said quietly, but I've made a life here. I found a purpose. Lyra scoffed. You've gone native. You don't understand. No, I don't. Because this place is insane. It's dangerous, Evelyn said firmly, but it's also beautiful. It's real. And if you want to survive, you need to listen. Lyra stared at her for a long time. Then she turned away, muttering, You were always the golden girl. Even in hell, you land on your feet. The words sliced deeper than Evelyn expected. I didn't land anywhere, she whispered. I fought for this. That night, the grove was uneasy. The Ashborn had fled, but the wound lingered. Fires were out. Watch shifts rotated. Everyone was waiting for healing, for rebuilding, for the next threat. And now, there was Lyra. Evelyn stood beside the crystal spring, staring into the still water. Her reflection shifted in the moonlight's card, wild-haired, dressed in bark thread and soot. So different from the woman Lyra had known. She heard the footsteps before she felt the presence. Fenric sat beside her in his half-shifted from long limbs, furred shoulders, golden eyes. He didn't speak, just watched her. She doesn't understand, Evelyn said quietly. I don't blame her. This world, it breaks you open. He rumbled low. You chose. She looked at him, startled. You're speaking more. His eyes softened. You, listen. Her chest ached at that. She reached out, tracing her fingers along his jaw. I'm afraid she'll try to take me back, she admitted. Remind me who I was. Fenric shook his head slowly. You are, now not before. Evelyn closed her eyes. I don't want to leave, not ever. A silence passed. Then, gently Fenric rested his forehead against hers. And for the first time, Evelyn understood what it meant to be truly seen. Lyra wasn't adjusting. In the 3 days since her arrival, she had refused every offered weapon, insulted Hollow Grove's customs at every turn, and barely stepped outside the den Fenric and Evelyn had once shared. She turned her nose up at sweet blood beans, dismissed marrowvine poultice as weird nature goo, and referred to Bram as your weird furry boyfriend's furry friend. Bram, to his credit, took it in stride. So he muttered to Evelyn while sharpening his daggers, How long until we stuff her in a moss bag and float her downriver? Bram, Evelyn sighed, brushing soot from a salvaged cooking pan. I'm kidding. Mostly, but she's poison, Ev. You can feel it. She could. Lyra moved like she was too big for this world, like it offended her with every breath. She'd spent the night arguing with Nira about primitive sleeping conditions, and demanded to see the elders in charge. Nira offered to duel her. That nearly ended in claws. Evelyn sat near the fire that evening, watching Lyra pace, arms folded tight across her chest. I know what this is, Lyra said suddenly. Evelyn blinked. What? This is Stockholm Syndrome. Or trauma bonding. Or whatever. You think this monster loves you because he hasn't ripped your face off. Evelyn rose, voice calm but iron hard. Don't call him that. Lyra stopped pacing, incredulous. Are you even hearing yourself? You've mated with a shapeshifted forest wolf. I've built to life. A home. You disappeared. Everyone thought you were dead. We had funerals. Your mother was hospitalized from grief. Evelyn's stomach twisted. Lyra pressed her advantage. And you're here, with him. Acting like this isn't madness. Evelyn stared into the flames. I grieved too, she said. I screamed into the woods at night. I bled. I nearly died. And then I changed. Because this world made me fight for every breath. And Fenric, he didn't rescue me. He stood beside me. Every step. Lyra scoffed. You sound brainwashed. I sound awake. Something cracked in Lyra's mask just for a second. Jealousy maybe. Or fear. I was supposed to be the one who had the adventure, she whispered. You were the quiet one. The teacher. The play-it-safe girl. Evelyn's jaw tensed. Maybe that's why I survived. I adapted. Lyra turned away. You don't belong here. I do. And that was the truth of it. Lyra didn't break. She shattered. She bolted for the edge of camp in a blur, disappearing into the brush. Evelyn cursed and gave chase. She found her deep within the hollow grove roots standing at the monolith. The same one Evelyn had touched weeks ago. Its silver veins pulsed faintly in the moonlight, like breath caught between beats. Lyra pressed her palm to it. The air changed. The monolith shuddered. Lyra, stop. But it was too late. A crack of lightning split the sky overhead. She screamed. The light flared, throwing Evelyn backward. When she blinked, Lyra was standing, no longer dazed, no longer afraid. She was smiling. What did you do? Evelyn whispered. I think I found a way home, Lyra said, eyes burning with silver light. And I'm not leaving you behind this time. She turned, stepped into the light, and vanished. Evelyn knelt in the damp moss, shaken. Fenric was at her side in an instant, catching her as she sagged. She's gone? Evelyn breathed. She opened something. He growled softly, staring at the monolith. It's reacting, changing. Lyra wasn't just a visitor, Evelyn said. She was sent. And she just tore a hole in the veil. Fenric's eyes glowed bright. We're not alone anymore, Evelyn whispered. The world I left behind just found the door. She reached for him. And this time, she was trembling. Not from grief, but from fear. That night, Evelyn lay awake beside Fenric in silence. Her heart no longer beat just for herself, or even for him. It beat for the Wildrealm, for the grove, for the people, for the life she had clawed from ash and blood. And now, everything she loved was at risk, because the past had found its way in, and it wouldn't leave without a price. Chapter 8 of Blood and Moonlight. The moon turned red 3 nights after Lyra vanished. It rose slowly, bleeding across the sky in crimson hues that tainted the canopy, the river, even the moss beneath Evelyn's feet. The Wildrealm shivered beneath its glow, birds silent, wind dead, as if all things living knew to hold their breath. Evelyn did not sleep. Neither did Fenric. He stood at the edge of the clearing, his back to her, body half shifted for rippling, spine tense, eyes reflecting the red like twin infernos. She watched him from the hollow of their den, arms wrapped around her knees, heart twisting in a slow, painful rhythm. He hadn't spoken in hours, not even his usual soft growls, just silence, the kind of silence that came before a storm. Talk to me, she said softly, stepping into the moonlight. He didn't turn. The blood moon, she whispered. You said it comes in cycles, that your people lose themselves, he finished, his voice low, harsh. Forget name, perk, mate, you fought it before. This moon is different. She stepped closer. Why? He finally turned and the look in his eyes chilled her. Because it wasn't just fear, it was guilt. The veil is thin, he said, between worlds, between forms, between minds. I feel it, her pain, her hunger. The Hollow King is dead, but something older stirs now. Evelyn shook her head. We stopped the Ashborn. We're stronger now. Fenric's voice dropped to a rasp. Not everything can be fought with blades. She reached for him. Then we fight it with this. With us. But he stepped back. No, he said. Not this time. She froze. What are you saying? I must go, he said. To the caverns. Ash Spire Cradle. Where the old blood sleeps. Her blood ran cold. Ash Spire Cradle, where the dire wolves of old bound themselves to the moon's madness, seeking power. Few returned. Fewer stayed whole. You'll lose yourself. Then better I do it far from you. No. Her voice cracked. You don't have to leave. We can face this. He touched her cheek with a trembling hand. If I stay, I might forget who you are. What you mean? And if that happens, I will kill anyone who touches you. Even Bram. Even Nira. Even me, she whispered. He didn't answer, but the silence was answer enough. She grabbed his hand. There has to be another way. There is not. Tears filled her eyes. I just found you, and I would burn myself to keep you safe. He kissed her, fierce and desperate, as if trying to remember every piece of her, and then, he was gone, vanishing into the trees like mist, and Evelyn was alone beneath the bleeding sky. The next morning, the grove was restless. The moon hadn't faded with dawn. It hung above the canopy like a great red eye watching, judging. Whispers spread among the fen kin. The old moon returns. The veil is thinning. The sky seer must choose. Evelyn ignored them. She gathered her gear, her blade, her satchel of healing poultices and dried fire fruit. She packed it all, and headed for Ashspire Cradle. Bram caught her at the gate. "You're insane. I'm going after him." Nira leaned against a root wall, arms folded. "If he went to Ashspire, he's already halfway gone. Then I'll go halfway after him," Evelyn snapped, "and drag him the rest of the way." Bram scratched his head. "You know I love a dramatic rescue. But if Fenric rips your throat out, I told you so." Evelyn smiled grimly. "Duly noted." Nira stepped forward and placed something in her hand, a small vial of amber liquid. "Moonroot extract," she said. "It might anchor him, or kill him, or both." "I'll take the risk," Evelyn said. Nira nodded once. "Come back," Bram said. "Both of you." Evelyn tightened her pack and vanished into the forest, the weight of the moon at her back. Ashspire Cradle rose from the Wildrealm like a broken fang. Black cliffs jagged into the sky, seeping steam from hidden vents. The air reeked of sulfur and forgotten death. As she climbed the ridgeline, Evelyn saw scorch marks carved into the rock, runic symbols, half erased by time. "Warning," they whispered. "Turn back." But she pressed on. At the cavern mouth, she hesitated. The air pulsed with heat, with magic, and inside, something howled. Not a beast, not a man, something in between. Evelyn tightened her grip on the blade and stepped into the dark. The inside of Ashspire Cradle swallowed sound. Evelyn stepped carefully across jagged stone, every footfall echoing too loudly in the darkness. The walls pulsed faintly with crimson light, veins of lava thread winding through black basalt like blood in rock. The air was heavy, thick with heat and grief and something older still. Every instinct in her screamed to turn back, but she followed the scent. Familiar, wild Fenric. She rounded a bend in the cavern and froze. He stood in the hollow center of the chamber, back arched, body contorted between forms. His limbs twitched, his claws gouged the floor. Hair bristled in waves down his spine. He breathed in guttural snarls, head thrown back to the glowing red orb that hovered impossibly high in the hollowed ceiling, an illusion of the blood moon, summoned by the cradle's old magic. He didn't see her, not yet. She took one step, and he turned. His eyes were wrong, still gold but rimmed in reed, feral, dilated. His mouth opened in a snarl, teeth bared. "Fenric," she whispered. A shiver passed through his frame. He stepped forward, not as a man, not as her mate, but as a beast. "Fenric, listen to me," she said, reaching slowly for the vial Nira had given her. "You're not gone. You're still you." He growled low, backing her toward the wall, each step echoing like the ticking of a clock winding down. "Please," she begged, "come back." But his gaze glazed over, his muscles tensed. He leapt, Evelyn of a side at the last second. His body crashed into the wall behind her, stone cracking. He whirled faster than she remembered, jaws snapping inches from her neck. She ducked, rolled, and came up with the vial in her palm. "Don't make me use this," she warned, her voice trembling. Fenric snarled and charged. She braced for impact, raised the vial, and at the last second she didn't throw it. She dropped it, let it shatter between them. The scent of moonroot flooded the air, sharp, sweet, metallic. He skidded to a halt, snarled, shuddered, his legs buckled. He let out a strangled sound, not a growl, not a howl, a cry. Evelyn crawled to him, tears blurring her vision. "Come back, please, Fenric, don't leave me now." His breath came in shallow bursts. He trembled, clawing at the ground as if trying to dig his way out of himself. Then slowly he looked up, and his eyes cleared. Not completely, but enough. "Evelyn," he rasped. She pressed her forehead to his. "I'm here, I'm not leaving." His body shifted again, muscles tightening, cracking, bones realigning. The fur along his chest pulled back, revealing scars, skin, and shuddering breath. He collapsed into her arms, human, exhausted, trembling like a child after a nightmare. She held him there, rocking slightly, her own body broken and soot-streaked, and still wrapped in love. "I found you," she whispered. "You didn't lose me." He buried his face in her shoulder. "I hurt you?" "No." She lied gently. "Not yet." He huffed, half a laugh, half a sob. "I almost forgot you," he murmured. The blood, it tried to bury everything. But it didn't, she said, because I wouldn't let it. Silence hung between them, broken only by their breathing and the distant groan of the cave. Then he looked at her again. Others will come. Evelyn nodded. The veil's thin. Lyra opened something. She was not alone. A chill passed through her. How do you know? He touched his chest where the magic had burned brightest. I felt them. From her world. From yours. Evelyn swallowed hard. Then we need to go back. Warn Hollow Grove. Fenric nodded, but didn't rise. She took his hand. We'll rest first. You're hurt. I'll heal, he said, but you changed. She smiled faintly. I had to. You weren't the only one with blood to burn. They returned by moonlight. Together. Evelyn limped beside Fenric, shoulders brushing, eyes scanning the tree line as they approached the outskirts of Hollow Grove. The blood moon still hung above, but its power had dimmed. Its heat had passed, but its warning had not. As they entered the grove, Bram ran to meet them, relief and sarcasm battling on his face. Well, look who didn't get eaten. Evelyn grinned, not for lack of trying. Fenric gave Bram a low growl. Bram raised his hands. Easy, Fang boy. I'm just glad you're back. Nira appeared beside him, arms folded, expression unreadable. You survived Ash Spire, she said. Evelyn nodded. But something's coming. Nira's eyes narrowed. What? The veil, Fenric said. It's open, and what lies beyond it remembers us. Evelyn met her gaze. We need to prepare for a war not just of blade and tooth but of worlds. Nira stared for a long beat, then nodded once. We'll be ready. That night, as Evelyn lay curled beside Fenric beneath the heart tree, her dreams were filled with flickering lights, impossible skies, and Lyra's voice echoing from beyond the veil. Come home. But when Evelyn opened her eyes, she was already there, and she wasn't going back. Chapter 9 Heart of the Veil. The sky cracked open on the third day. Evelyn felt it before she saw it, a deep, aching pressure that built behind her ribs, like thunder rolling in her chest. The air warped, birds stopped singing, even Hollow Grove held its breath. She stood in the grove's heart beside Fenric, watching as a silver seam split the sky far in the east, a jagged scar that pulsed with pale light. The veil. It was tearing, and from its pilled light, cold and sharp, unlike anything the Wildrealm had ever known. I know that place, Evelyn murmured. I've seen it in dreams. Fenric stood beside her in human form, his furred shoulders tense, his gaze fixed on the growing rift. It is where the old kings vanished, where Q-Ire Arthur fell. It's where Lyra went. He nodded once. And now, he said, she's calling others. A howl echoed in the distance, not Direwolf, not Ashborn. Something new. Something wrong. Evelyn turned to the gathered wolves nearer. Bram, the Emberfang scouts. I'm going through. Bram dropped the knife he was twirling. You're what now? She's opening it wider. I can feel it. I have to stop her before the veil tears completely. Before this world becomes a battleground for both. Nira stepped forward. We'll follow you. No. Evelyn said, this is something I have to do alone. Fenric growled. No. She turned to him. Took his hand. You've given me everything, Fenric. A reason to survive. A reason to stay. Now I have to give this back to protect what we've built. You won't come back. I have to believe I will. His eyes blazed. Then I come too. No, she cupped his face. If I fall, you lead them. Protect them. He closed his eyes, breathing ragged. You are not the same as her. I know, but I have to face her. A long silence. Then he leaned forward and kissed her deep, grounding, final. She turned and walked toward the rift. The journey east took one day. The Wildrealm changed as she approached the edge. Trees grew sparse, leaves turned silver, animals moved in reverse patterns, their eyes glowing with a strange inner light. The ground shimmered beneath her boots, sometimes hard, sometimes like water. Reality was fraying. When she reached the veil's heart, it stood like a doorway of light tall as a tower, humming with a voice only her bones could hear. Evelyn stepped forward and passed through. The world beyond was not Earth, not the Wildrealm, but a corridor between them, a liminal space of floating roots, shattered ruins, and sky made of mirror and memory. She floated more than walked, carried by some unseen current. Time unraveled here. She saw flashes. Her childhood bedroom, her mother reading fairy tales. The empty desk in her old classroom. The night she met Fenric, bleeding in the moss, his breath warming her shoulder. Then, Lyra standing at the center of the veil's vortex, no longer dressed in earth-made fabrics, but in silver threads and a crown of fractured bone. Her eyes glowed with the same pale fire as the rift. Her skin pulsed like it had swallowed a storm. She turned slowly and smiled. Evie, she said, her voice layered in echoes. You finally made it. Evelyn stepped onto the floating platform, gripping her blade. What have you done? I opened the door, Lyra said, arms wide. The one you locked behind you. This world isn't yours. It was never yours either. You just got here first. This isn't about who belongs where. You're tearing everything apart. I'm fixing it, Lyra said. Do you know what they said after you vanished? That you ran away. That you cracked. But me? She laughed, the sound sharp and hollow. I was always second to you. Always overlooked. Until now. Evelyn stepped closer. Lyra, you don't have to do this. Lyra's expression hardened. I already have. She raised her hand, and the veil screamed. The veil screamed. It wasn't sound, it was pressure, a tearing in the air in Evelyn's bones, in the memory of everything she had once been. Lyra's body pulsed with fractured light as she rose above the platform, arms outstretched, silver fire streaming from her fingers into the broken seams of reality. Behind her, earth shimmered in fragments. Evelyn's mother in a hospital bed, flickering city lights, subway doors closing on phantom passengers. On the other side, the Wildrealm pulsed in agony, roots unraveling, rivers running in reverse, hollow grove flickering like candlelight in a storm. I can make it one, Lyra breathed, eyes glowing. No more pain. No more separation. No more choosing. You're destroying them both. Evelyn shouted, wind whipping her voice across the shifting plain. They're already broken. Lyra snapped. You just found a prettier cage. Evelyn stepped forward, blade drawn. You don't get to decide what lives or dies because the world didn't love you the way you wanted. Lyra's laugh cracked like glass. It loved you though, didn't it? You got the wolves and the prophecy and the mate who'd bleed to protect you. You got everything. Evelyn's hands shook. I never wanted this, she said quietly, but I earned it, with every bruise, every choice. And now you'll lose it. Lyra's from exploded outward in a flare of silver flame. The ground beneath Evelyn vanished. They plummeted together into a chasm of light and shadow. They fell through memory, through mirrors, through themselves. Evelyn landed hard in a version of her old classroom, desks overturned, windows smeared with ash. The calcboard read in jagged script, was it worth it? Lyra stood in the doorway, eyes dimmer now, her voice softer. You left them all behind. I didn't leave, Evelyn whispered. I found. The world twisted. She stood in Hollow Grove, fire spreading through the trees. Fenric lay at the heart tree's base, lifeless, his body pierced by obsidian roots. Evelyn staggered forward. No, this isn't real. Lyra appeared beside her. It will be, if you don't let go of him, of this. The Wildrealm doesn't belong to us. Tears streamed down Evelyn's face. It does now, because I made it mine. She raised her blade, hand steady. Lyra's eyes widened. You would kill me. I don't want to, but you would. Evelyn's voice cracked. If it means saving him, yes. Lyra looked at her, really looked, and for a moment, her expression crumpled. I just wanted to matter. You do, but not like this. The world shattered. They stood again in the space between. The veil behind them ragged, pulsing. Evelyn stepped forward, and lowered the blade. I won't kill you, she said, but I'll stop you. She placed her hand on Lyra's chest, and focused. Sky seer, the word echoed through her veins, and the light answered. Feathers of glowing radiance unfurled from her shoulders, wings not of flesh but of memory, of power, of choice. She closed her eyes, and willed the veil shut. The energy screamed through her bones, but she held. The silver threads frayed, then tightened. The rift closed inch by inch until only one crack remained. Lyra fell to her knees, breathing. Human again. Broken. Evelyn dropped beside her, shaking. I'm sorry, Lyra whispered. I know. Evelyn said. A beat passed, and then like mist clearing, Evelyn knew what she had to do. She looked back at the final seam in the veil. Earth flickered on the other side. Her apartment, her mother's face. Home one step. That was all it would take. But behind her she felt it. Fenric's presence. The pulse of the Wildrealm. Her real home. Her real life. She touched the veil. I forgive you, she whispered to the world she once knew. And let it go. The last seam sealed shut. The light faded, and Evelyn fell. She landed in Fenric's arms, gasping, alive. The grove howled with joy. The moon turned white once more. The veil was closed, and the Wildrealm was safe. Chapter 10. Born of Wild and Sky. The Wildrealm healed slowly, like a great, breathing creature roused from nightmare. It stretched its limbs and rained at its wounds with moss and root and thyme. The trees of Hollow Grove stood taller. The ash receded. the rivers sang again, and Evelyn, she did not wake for 3 days. When she finally opened her eyes, she was lying beneath the heart tree, wrapped in sun-warmed hides, the crystal spring murmuring gently nearby. Fenric was there, his head resting against her thigh, asleep, in human form, breath slow, brow furrowed with restless worry. She reached out with trembling fingers and touched his hair. He stirred instantly. "Evelyn," he whispered, voice ragged with relief. Her name had never sounded so much like prayer. "I'm here," she croaked. He sat up fully, cradling her face. "You came back." "I couldn't leave," she said, tears rising. "Not when everything I love is here." He leaned down and kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then her lips gently, reverently, as though each part of her had to be reminded she was safe. "I saw the world end," he murmured, "in dreams. I thought I'd lost you." Evelyn's hand curled over his heart. "You never did." Behind them, Bram's voice cut in. "I'm not crying, but I am throwing up a little." Fenric didn't even glance back. "Leave." Nira smacked Bram's arm as she passed. "Let them breathe full." Evelyn laughed, just a small sound, but real. Then she sat up slowly. The world tilted. Fenric steadied her with a hand on her back. "Easy." "I'm fine," she said, but her voice quivered with something she hadn't yet named. Something warm, heavy, blooming. I fluttered deep in her belly. She pressed a hand there, stopped, felt it again. A pulse, not her own. Fenric noticed her stillness. "Evelyn?" She looked at him, wide-eyed. "I think I'm not alone." He frowned, then realization dawned in his eyes like sunrise. His hand moved to her stomach, still, careful. The breath left him in a shudder, and in that silence, the world shifted once more, not with fear, but with life. That evening, the grove held feast and fire in their honor. Evelyn sat among the roots of the heart tree, garlands of frost blossoms braided in her hair, wrapped in a new cloak woven of hollow moss and dusk-fowl feathers. Fenric stayed close, never more than a breath away. His people circled them with howls of joy and reverence. Nira passed a horn of fermented root wine and raised it. To the sky Seer and her mate the fire that broke the storm. To the pup, Bram added, grinning, "May it not inherit Fenric's scowl." Evelyn laughed and raised her own horn. "To the Wildrealm may we protect it, even from ourselves." The fire roared in response, a great bloom of orange and gold licking the sky. But amid the joy, Evelyn knew the work was not over. The veil was sealed, but not forgotten. Its memory hummed in her bones, and her child, their child, carried more than just blood and legacy. It carried possibility. Later that night, under the stars, Fenric traced his hand over the curve of her stomach. They lay side by side on the mossy rise outside the den. The grove spread before them in silver and shadow. "Will they accept it?" Evelyn asked softly. "A child of two worlds." "They will," he said, "or they'll answer to me." She smiled, but it faded. "What if they come again, Fenric? What if someone opens the veil?" He turned toward her, brushing her hair back. "Then we face them, together, and if I'm taken back, you won't be." She looked up at the stars, and one of them fell, but it didn't fade. It brightened, grew, became a ribbon of silver light trailing down the sky like a scar undone. Fenric sat up, so did Evelyn. "Is that?" The light bent toward them, toward her, then it vanished. A whisper curled through the leaves, so faint it could have been a dream. "To the world, you may be one person." Evelyn's heart stopped. She turned to Fenric. He had heard it too. His eyes were wide, hopeful, afraid. "But to one soul, you are the world." The words weren't hers, but they had been spoken. Somewhere beyond the sky, a door had creaked. And maybe, just maybe, he could follow her across it. Spring bled slowly into summer in the Wildrealm. The trees budded again, fresh and soft, like breath after sorrow. Frost blossoms retreated to the higher canopy, and new saplings, born of ash and storm, pushed through scorched soil like stubborn hearts. Evelyn no longer walked as a stranger. She was Sky Seer, mate of Fenric, speaker of peace. But more than any of those things, she was home. She stood in the garden Nira had helped her plant, sweet blood vines winding along bent willow ribs, dusk-feathered fowl pecking lazily in the shade. Her belly had grown round beneath her tunic, taut with life. Her steps were slower now, but certain. The child stirred within her like a second heartbeat. Some nights, she dreamed of wings, others of fangs, always of stars. "Don't climb the watch route alone," Fenric said behind her, emerging from the den with a half-smile. "You're nesting on cliffs now." "I'm scouting," she said, "you know, in case more stubborn humans fall through the sky." He reached for her, sliding an arm around her waist, hands played protectively over her belly. She leaned into him. "This world is louder than I ever imagined," she murmured. "But it sings now," he said, brushing his lips to her temple. They stood there in silence as the sky began to turn gold, the air scented with moss and marrow vine blossoms. "I'm afraid," she whispered. Fenric looked down. "Of what?" "That I'll forget what I was before," she said. "That someday this child will ask who I was, and I won't have an answer." "You'll tell them the truth," he said, "that you bled and broke and stayed." She smiled, soft and fragile. "And you?" He grinned faintly. "That I was never really a beast, just waiting for a reason to be more." Her fingers laced with his, and for a long time, they watched the sun rise over a world they had helped rebuild. That night, the dreams returned, but they weren't nightmares. Not this time. Evelyn stood in a twilight grove. The trees were silver-veined. The wind was warm. In her arms, she held a child not yet born, but already real. Ahead stood a figure wrapped in light. Her mother. Evelyn's throat tightened. "Mama?" The woman nodded, smiling with quiet sadness. "Will it be hard?" Evelyn asked. The woman brushed hair from Evelyn's face. "Yes." "Will they understand him?" "Some will," her mother said. "Others will fear what they can't name." Evelyn looked down at the child in her arms. He stirred, one hand reaching toward the stars. "What do I do?" "Raise him in both truths," the woman said. "Yours. And his. And if the worlds tear again," her mother's eyes shone, "then he will be the bridge." Evelyn blinked, and awoke to warmth, to Fenric's arms wrapped around her, to the child within her turning toward the sound of his voice. Days passed. Hollow Grove grew. The Marl and GS were seen only at the edges now. The Ashbourne vanished like mist. The Emberfang sent scouts to watch the borders, and Bram, to no one's surprise, decided he'd rather stick around and help name the pup. Nira rolled her eyes but didn't argue. The wolves whispered of the Sky Seer's child, of moons reborn, of magic returning. And Evelyn, she waited, not with dread, but with readiness, until one night beneath a full moon that shone gentle and white above the trees, her water broke in a field of frost blossoms. Fenric was beside her in seconds, breath quick, hands steady. Bram ran circles like a headless dusk fowl until Nira knocked him flat, and told him to boil something, anything. And Evelyn bore down, gritted her teeth, screamed not in pain but power. And when the child arrived, slick and warm and wailing into the night, the wind rose like song. A chorus of wolves howled under the stars. A new voice had joined the Wildrealm. Later, Evelyn held the newborn close, wrapped in soft moss and dusk feathers, his eyes golden, like Fenric's but wide, curious, and lit with some unknowable spark. He did not cry. He watched, and Evelyn felt something settle in her that had never existed before, a peace that rooted deep. Fenric knelt beside them, reverent. She looked up at him, tears slipping down her cheeks. "He's ours." He touched the baby's brow with trembling fingers. "And he is both." Weeks passed, and the nun day. A ripple stirred at the edge of the grove, a soft wind, a seam of light, and from eye to feather, pale as moonlight, drifted into Evelyn's hand. Not a message, not a threat, a promise. She turned to Fenric, who had felt it too. He looked past the trees, to where the sky shimmered faintly, and said maybe one day he'll walk both worlds. Evelyn smiled, and find his own. She pressed her lips to her child's brow, and whispered, "Wherever you go, whatever you become, know this. You were born of wild and sky." Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, give it a like and subscribe for more beautiful tales. Tap the next thumbnail to continue your journey.